This is our monthly new partner introduction. This is for those of you that have recently joined the Zyxel Partner Program or have employees who have recently joined your company who need a little bit of refresher or insight into all the different products that Zyxel offers. So we'll be doing, for the most part, a pretty high-level overview. We've got a lot of different products to go through. So we're just going to kind of hit the main categories here, talk about maybe some of the key features or differentiations, and then move on. As we go through today, feel free to send in any questions you have. Use the Q&A box in the Zoom interface. Do not use chat. Do not use by raising your hand. Send them in via Q&A because that's what I can see and respond to them most easily. So without further ado, we'll get started. So just a very quick one-slide overview of Zyxel. So Zyxel has been around since 1989, so over 30 years now of making networking products. We have over 100 million devices deployed out in the field. We serve 150 different global markets. Our US headquarters is based out of Anaheim, California. So that's sales, marketing, our warehouse, and our tech support. So when you call into tech support during normal hours, you are talking to Zyxel employees. For the most part, based out of our Anaheim office, although I think a few of them are working remotely currently due to the COVID situation. So you've recently joined our partner program. So one of the benefits you get of joining our partner program is access to these webinars, additional discounts for purchases made through distribution, provided you, depending on what tier of partner you are, gets you access to priority access to our tech support team, etc. So on the channel side of things here, we break our products down into a couple key categories. We've got security appliances, wireless products, switches, gateway products, and network management products. We're going to start by talking about security appliances. This is probably one of our most broad ranges of products and the one that causes a lot of confusion for people because there are so many different models. So we'll start off here with ICSA Labs. I think these days they're a division of Verizon, but they've been around for a long time, and their job basically is to set standards and do actual testing of products. So they have continuously certified our firewall VPN products for the last 20 years with no breaks. When it comes to our UTM and security services, rather than doing like some of our competition and trying to be a antivirus company and a web filtering company, etc., we instead partner with various different leaders in the industry and use their signatures and their information to help power our UTM appliances. So that includes people like McAfee, WebRoot, Trend Micro, Bitdefender, etc. So as we go through here, most of our different product lines are going to offer these sorts of features. May depend a little bit based on the individual model. So VPN high availability, the ability to have 2 different VPN tunnels, doing active-active, either load balancing or active-passive failover. The ability to do multiple WAN load balancing. Virtual tunnel interface, so you can trunk VPNs together. The ability to use what we call SSL VPN Extender. It's basically a super lightweight software for Windows and Mac for remote users to be able to quickly and easily get a VPN connection back to the office without having to worry about certificates and things like that. We support L2TP over IPsec for secure VPNs to mobile devices such as phones and tablets. Our easy VPN functionality and make it really easy to set up VPNs, cut out a lot of the hassle that goes along with it. On the UTM side of things, we offer controller-based antivirus. We offer content filtering. We have what we call application intelligence. So we have the ability to identify different applications and different behaviors of those applications and make it really easy for you to create firewall policy rules based on that. So instead of having to know, ports and IP ranges and things like that, you can simply go in and use drop-down menus and say, okay, I want to set up some rules here for, say, Facebook Messenger. And you can go in there and use it and identify it that way. You can maybe identify the difference between a video chat and a file transfer and create different rules based on what they're actually doing with those apps. Geo Enforcer for being able to block things based on the IP address that the traffic is coming from. Our ATP series offers sandbox and machine learning. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We've got botnets and malware blockers, IDP, intrusion protection, etc. Thanks, Terry, for the spelling correction. See if I can remember that here at the end and update the slide for that. So most of our products have an integrated wireless LAN controller, so you can use your security gateway device as a wireless LAN controller. No need for a separate dedicated box. We also have the ability to provide hotspot management, whether we're talking about just simply providing secure guest access for people visiting a location, or whether we're talking about deploying a small hotel and managing guests there. We have the ability to add that on for most of our firewall products. We offer link aggregation groups, high availability. So you can have two of our firewalls set up. So if one of them should fail for some reason, the other one takes over. SSL packet inspection, etc. So one of the other cool things here is more and more people are moving their applications to cloud-based instances. So our security products have been validated and approved by both AWS and Microsoft's cloud networking platform, is being able to create a secure private VPN to the cloud. So it allows you to easily access your cloud-based applications that are hosted by either AWS or Microsoft, and treat them as if they were something that was hosted there locally on the network as far as security and access rules and restrictions apply. So we'll start off by talking about the VPN series, which is also our SD-WAN series. So as we're going through these security products today, I mean, there's tons of them. So I'm not going to start breaking down the individual models in these different product lines. So we're just going to talk generally about the product line. In general, the primary differences when you're looking at them is the number and configuration of ports that you find on the device, and just how much horsepower it has. So, you know, what the firewall SPI throughput is, what the UTM throughput is, what the VPN throughput is, etc. So what you want to do if you've decided, hey, I need one of these products, you know, you're looking at how many WAN ports do I need, how many LAN ports do I need, and then you just look at what sort of throughput do you need to be able to achieve. How fast is that customer's internet connection today? How fast is that customer's internet connection going to likely be in 3 years, and what am I doing with it? And you can do that. So reach out to your salesperson. They can also help you narrow this down. Unfortunately, one of the trends in the industry here is basically quoting speeds in absolutely ideal circumstances. So talk to your salesperson. They can help guide you and get you a better idea of more realistic terms as to what sort of throughput for individual applications we can get through these. We used to put more realistic numbers on there, but unfortunately it looks really bad when your competitor is, you know, quoting twice the speed as you, because they're using an idealized situation that you're not going to encounter in the real world. Terry, I hope that kind of answers your question there on the throughput side. We're doing the same as the other guys. We're using these idealized numbers in idealized scenarios. But again, you know, reach out to Jacob or David or Try. They can help get you some more realistic ideas of what sort of horsepower you need based on what you're trying to achieve. So these VPN products can also be upgraded from a VPN firewall gateway to an SD-WAN gateway. So SD-WAN is basically a way of, oops, I guess we have to click through to animate this. Lovely. So SD-WAN is basically seen primarily as a replacement for MPLS. So for those of you that aren't familiar with it, historically the way, if you've got multiple locations, you want to create an internal phone system between those locations. You want to do some other sorts of data transfer between those locations, such as updating sales or employee records. You would go out and you would pay the telephone company for a dedicated, quote unquote, high-speed connection between those different places. So you would have this dedicated line connecting your different locations together. It was really expensive, and the speeds on that are nowhere near kept up with the way the internet things are going. So SD-WAN is a way of basically replacing that in a secure way and using just general public internet. And there's all sorts of tricks because we control both ends of this VPN tunnel. So there's tricks and things we can do which will make dramatically improve the performance of traffic over these VPNs versus in a typical normal situation. WAN acceleration, there's a bunch of different things that can go in there. So that's what we do. So it allows you to do VoIP, for instance, over VPN between a whole bunch of different locations and have it sound really good. So, whoops, what's going on here? I cannot advance the slide. There we go. So I'm not going to get into it more in depth. I know Tri has some dedicated presentations where they really go in depth into how SD-WAN works. But here's a situation here. We're connecting these two offices together. You can see here the ping time between these two, the round trip time is 290 milliseconds. Loss is 0.3% packet loss. Jitter is just 3 milliseconds, so it's pretty good jitter. It's pretty consistent. And what you see here is without SD-WAN optimization, transferring this 2 gig file takes almost 3 hours of time. Whereas using SD-WAN, it takes just 10 minutes to transfer the file. So what's going on here is generally TCP IP over the internet slows down as it encounters errors as it crosses, the vast public network here between these different countries. This is Germany and Taiwan. So by using SD-WAN, we can actually get a fast enough, smooth enough, reliable enough connection that we could not only boost or reduce how long it takes to transfer files, but it makes it actually reliable enough to do voice over IP over the VPN tunnel without any issues. So it's a really cool feature if you're looking for that application. It is kind of specialized there. So from there, we'll talk about the NSG series of products. These guys are a little bit of an outlier. These ones work with our Nebula cloud management system, which we'll talk about a little bit later. It's a different way of managing your customers, managing their devices. And it's particularly focused on streamlining things and making it go really simple and really easy. So it offers general, firewall functionality, offers UTM, offers some push button VPN, stuff like that, but it doesn't get you that full granular detail and some of those more advanced features you find on our other security products. So it's something to use if you're looking for centralized management, or if you're just looking to do basic firewall UTM functionality and you're not looking to create a lot of complex policy routes and rules and things like that. From there is our USG series. So this guy has been around for years now. They're kind of like the bread and butter device for us here. These will be going away here in the near future and will be replaced by the USG Flex series. Now we've still got plenty of the standard USG and probably will for quite some time. So we're not forcing you to make the jump today to the USG Flex, but it is something that is coming, and the USG Flex products are available today. So very similar as far as the core functionality goes between the Zyxel regular USG series and the USG Flex series. At some point next year, the USG Flex series will be able to be managed with Nebula like the NSG series is today. The USG series does not. But the big difference here is the USG Flex series is got much better performance. So up to 125% increase in firewall performance, up to 500% increase in UTM performance. So it's basically, we're moving up. Chips have moved along since the original USG series, so we've upgraded to the newest generation of chips, and you benefit from that. So we do make it easy for you to migrate your existing customers from a USG to a USG Flex. If they're using UTM services, we'll go ahead and carry those UTM services over to the USG Flex. In the rare situation where you have different products on the USG expiring at different times, we'll go ahead and round those all up so everything is expiring at the same time. And automatically apply that on top of the 12 months of UTM service that comes with the USG Flex when you buy it as a bundle. So this is how we're breaking down the new mapping. So those USG 40s, those will move over to the Flex 100. The USG 60s will move to the Flex 200. the USG 110 to the Flex 500, as well as the USG 210 and the USG 310 up to the USG Flex 700. And then the other line that we have here is our ATP series. So the ATP is Advanced Threat Protection. So we got another question here from Terry. So this is a good question here. Do any of the firewall products stop working, as in stop forwarding packets should the subscription run out? So the answer to that is no. So all of our firewall products will operate as firewall products. Even our cloud managed one, even the NSGs will continue to operate without a license just fine. The only license that's required on the products is if you want to use the UTM services. So if you want to use UTM, you do have to have an active UTM subscription, or one of the features. Maybe you don't want full UTM, you just want content filtering. Then you do need an active content filtering subscription to use that feature. If the license expires, that feature just turns off. The rest of the firewall gateway still continues to work just fine. There's some other stuff in there, like for instance, the wireless LAN management. If you're managing different access points, those are one-time licenses. Most of these will be managing at least 2 APs out of the box. And then you can buy a one-time license to increase the number of APs. So you'd buy that once and then that lasts for the life of the product. Same with the hotspot functionality features. The hotspot features are a one-time license. So I hope that answers those questions. So the ATP series is a different way of doing security than is traditionally how it's been done on a gateway appliance. So it's focused primarily on trying to stop zero-day threats, right? So the typical way, I think we've got it here on the next slide, the typical way UTM functionality works is your security gateway periodically downloads a list of signatures of threats, right? So you've got a threat company, in our case, Trend Micro, McAfee, whoever it is, they monitor the internet, they gather data, they identify threats, and then periodically they publish a signature that we then download onto your device. And then as traffic goes through, we try to match it to the signature. So you end up in a situation where you've got, stuff that is good, and you've got stuff that is suspicious or bad, so that gets blocked, right? So the signature says, hey, this is bad. The problem you run into here is what I'm going to call what we generally refer to as zero-day exploits, or just new things, right? So the internet's constantly evolving. There's constantly new products, new software tools hitting the market, and their traffic isn't going to fit one of these signatures right away. There's going to be a lag between when these new types of traffic go out on the internet and when McAfee and Trend Micro or whoever, figure out what that traffic is, create a signature for it, and then publish it, and then it gets downloaded to your device. So there's this lag between when stuff comes out and when it can be properly signature categorized. So the way ATP works at this here is when it takes stuff that's the unknown, something it doesn't recognize, and it uploads it into the cloud. So it goes into a series of virtual machines, and we use AI to look at that data, see what that traffic is doing, and figure out if it is something that we need to be worried about or if it's something that's benign. And then we'll automatically push that back out to all of our devices. So basically, as we add more and more and sell more ATP devices, we're getting quicker and quicker response times. We're seeing the traffic sooner. We're able to analyze the traffic. And as soon as we recognize the AI cloud figures out what it is, it's then able to push out updates to all the ATP devices that are connected to that cloud. So it allows much quicker turnaround time and allows us to deal with like zero-day exploits and things like that that may be out there threatening you. So that's it as far as hardware goes. I also want to take a brief second to talk a little bit here about SecuReporter. So this is a piece of software, or I guess it's actually a cloud-hosted implementation that you buy a license to. But basically, it's designed to make it easy for you to keep an eye on all of your customers' USGs and Zywalls that you've deployed out in the field. So it provides analysis, reporting, alerts, visualization, etc. So it takes in the log data, application data, security data, does a bunch of different types of analytics here, and then creates this SecuReporter report, which then breaks down, who, what, and when. So it's a nice tool for you to help keep an eye on your networks. Also, if you're selling UTM services to your customer, it's always a good idea to be able to go back through and provide some sort of reports to your customer to say, look, you're paying me for antivirus, you're paying me for geo-blocking, you're paying me for IDP. This is what it's done. This is what it's protected you for. So it can generate these reports, send them to you. You can have them sent to your customer. So one license or one security reporter here can manage all of your customers in one interface. Give me just a second, guys. Okay. So there you go. You can customize your reports. You can add your own logo to them and then have them sent to your customer. So that leads us now to Nebula Cloud Control. Excuse me. So Nebula is our cloud managed networking solution. It's designed to simplify the process of setting up networks, installing networks, and managing your customers and their networks. So one of the things you can do is you can start setting up your customer's network without taking out anything out of the box. Today, you can log into Nebula and start creating your customer's account, start creating their network, and start configuring things. Once you receive the hardware, you just need to scan the QR code on the box and assign it to your customer, and then ship it out to the customer's location for installation. There is, in most cases, nothing that you need to do as far as configuring the individual hardware directly. You simply scan it, and once it's plugged in and turned on, it will reach out to the cloud, it will update its firmware, and it will download the configuration based on the customer and the site that you assigned it to before it got there. So it takes very little time to set things up. We've got a number of different wizards and tools in the cloud to speed up the initial configuration as well. I used to do a demo when we actually still traveled and visited customers where I could create a my Zyxel account or a Nebula account, set up an access point and have it offering a regular network and a guest network. And I could do all that from scratch in under 5 minutes. So for Nebula to work, all you need is Nebula compatible hardware. There's no additional software you need. There is no additional hardware you need. So there's no cloud keys, no CNCs. There's no virtual machines you need to be running on servers someplace. It's simply plug in the hardware and the cloud takes care of the rest for you. So once you've got it set up, anywhere you've got an internet connection and a web browser, or you've got a mobile device, iOS or Android, you can keep an eye on your customers' networks. You can log in there and make changes. So the mobile app lets you keep an eye on things. As we mentioned before, it lets you scan in those QR codes. You can use it to take photos of the hardware as you install it, and that'll be stored in the cloud. So if you have to send someone on site later, it can help them find the device that they need to work on. And we're slowly adding new features to the mobile app. We have easy guest access with a huge amount of flexibility here. So customizable captive portal, all sorts of different options for logging in, have people log in with their Facebook account, have people just agree to a terms of service. We can set it up so people have to register with an email before they're granted access. They can create their own username and password. We can set it up so a front desk person can create unique usernames and passwords for people and manage those accounts. Tons of flexibility. All of our APs support Smart Mesh at this time. We've got on the Pro Pack in-depth reports as far as Wi-Fi health. On the switch side of things, we have our intelligent PoE, which frees up additional PoE budget for devices rather than relying just on the allocation method of things. Various network protection rules such as DHCP server guard, IGMP snooping stuff, loop guards, the ability to virtually stack all your switches. All configuration changes and firmware updates are done through the cloud. So there's no VPNing into the machines, no needs to do port forwards, anything like that. On the security side, we make it really easy to do VPNs. So for the most part, everything I've talked about here is free. So the free version of Nebula, unlimited number of devices, unlimited number of customers that you can manage, and you get access to all of the core functionality of the Nebula hardware for free. So when you're looking out there at products, you will see kind of three different classes of products. We have products like the NSG series, which are Nebula only. However, these days, most of our products are either Nebula Flex or Nebula Flex Pro. So Nebula Flex just means the device can be used in the traditional standalone method that we've used for decades now to manage networks, or you can switch the device over to Nebula and back and forth at any time. Nebula Flex Pro is the same idea, only we include 1 year of our professional pack, which is a premium service you can pay for on an annual basis to unlock additional reports, additional admin accounts, and some other features like that. In the case of access points, Nebula Flex Pro access points can also be managed with a controller as well as standalone or in the cloud. So we'll talk briefly here about the Pro Pack. So Pro Pack is an optional license you can get. Now, some of the products do include Pro Pack bundled in when you first plug them in. Whoops. I think my slides got messed up here. Let's see what's going on. Okay. And the other license, we didn't get it. It's just a slightly different presentation than I remembered. It's been 2 months since I did this one. So the other option we have here is our security license. That's our UTM licenses. So if you're looking to use an NSG gateway, you want to offer antivirus, content filtering, IDP, et cetera, that's done using the security license. So all of our NSGs include 1 year of all the security licenses in the Pro Pack out of the box. So we've got the free version of Nebula here. It's got the automatic firmware updates, the zero-touch deployments, all the core functionality of the products, the guest networks, et cetera. Some of the limits here are things like you've only got 5 admin accounts per organization that you can set up. So we've got really flexible admin accounts where you can really control who has access to what. Smart Mesh is part of the free version, all of that. So when you go up to the professional pack, it bumps up the logs from a week worth of logs to us storing a year's worth of logs in the cloud. We give you automatic email alerts when devices go offline. It unlocks a number of different reports that you can send to yourself or to your customers. It unlocks an unlimited number of admin accounts. We have a cloud authentication database, which you can use for 802.1x, you can use for MAC filtering, you can use for guest network access. So that increases from 100 accounts to an unlimited number of accounts that you can set up in the cloud with Pro Pack. We have a site topology view where we'll automatically map out what's plugged in on the network and what's connected to what, and some other stuff like that. So that's professional pack if you need it. It's available as an annual license or as a one-time lifetime license. So whichever works best for you there. And then the security pack, which is independent of the Nebula licenses there if you need the security services on the NSG. So we'll jump through them really quick. We've got the NSG security gateway. So that's what you would use on your firewall. Now, if you need features and functionality that are not part of the NSG, you are perfectly fine with using a USG or a Zyxel security appliance instead. It just can't be managed in the cloud. That's all. So you don't have to do your whole network as Nebula or something like that. It's just, if you want to manage it in Nebula, it has to be Nebula. So anything that's not Nebula enabled, you would just manage the traditional way. So switches here, we've got our NSW switches. These are switches that only work with Nebula, and these will be getting phased out here in the near future. But then our GS1920 V2 series, our 1930 series, our XS3800, our GS2220s, and our GS1350s, all of these are some version of Flex. So all of these can be used as either a standalone device traditionally, or can be used in the cloud. The 2220s and the 1350s come with 1 year of Nebula Pro out of the box. And just for those of you, because no one's asked yet, but this is a common question we get is, well, what happens if I mix and match products, some with Pro Pack, some without? So what we do is we do have everything expire at the same time, so co-termination. And the way we do that is we basically convert these annual licenses into points. We then distribute the points across all of the products that are being managed. So, if half the products are Nebula Flex Pro and half the products are just Nebula Flex, you'll even out and you'll end up with 6 months of Pro Pack basically across the entire organization, right? So since half have 1 year, so it ends up co-terminating, everything's at the same. Hope that made some sense. And then on the AP side of things, the short version here is nearly every access point we currently offer supports Nebula. There's 2 exceptions that don't really sell out well anyway. So this is a really complicated graph here. Reach out to your salesperson. They can provide you something very similar to this because I don't expect you to be able to memorize all the different stuff here. So that's it for Nebula. We're moving on quickly here to wireless. So I want to talk about some of the technologies you may see on some of the different products. So the first one is dual optimized antennas. So traditionally, an access point is got one antenna in it, or one set of antennas, and they're optimized based on the idea that you're going to deploy this access point on a ceiling in the middle of the area that needs to be covered. Unfortunately, in the real world, a lot of times you cannot mount access points on the ceiling. Instead, you've got to mount them on a wall or a pole or something like that. So you're now using a antenna coverage pattern that isn't ideal for the way you're using the device, right? You're sending a bunch of the signal down into the floor or up into the ceiling, and you're not getting as wide of a coverage area as would be ideal. So for our products that you see advertised with dual optimized antennas, we've got 2 different sets of antennas in there. One that's optimized for traditional ceiling mount and one that's optimized for wall mount. And you can flip back and forth between those 2 based on where you've installed this device. So it allows you to get, if you're stuck mounting a few of your APs on the wall, you can switch it to wall mode and get that optimized coverage for wall installations. The other technology you're going to see here is our smart antenna technology. If you're coming over to us from Ruckus, you're probably pretty familiar with it. It's very similar. So one question we get a lot is when people see 11AC Wave 2 products and they go, well, they have beamforming. It's the same thing. So no, beamforming is very different from smart antenna. So smart antenna, one of the key gains we get from it here is its ability to handle code channel interference. So what is code channel interference? Basically, when we're dealing with Wi-Fi, everything's using either a 2.4 or a 5 gigahertz channel. This is what we call unlicensed spectrum. And that's what access points are allowed to use. But that's also what cordless phones are allowed to use. Wireless mice are allowed to use, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all sorts of Zigbee, things like that. So all sorts of different things out there are using this unlicensed spectrum for various things. So you end up with a situation where you can get interference from other nearby objects. Also, as we keep increasing the speed of wireless access points, the amount of bandwidth a single AP is using at a time keeps going up and up and up. And there's only so much bandwidth available, especially on the 2.4. So you end up in situations where you're getting interference from your neighbors, or if you're in an office building from someone else's office, or even if it's one building that you own, you're getting interference from other APs if you have multiple APs deployed in the same building. So that's code channel interference. Different devices using the same channel at the same time. So smart antenna is optimized to help reduce that sort of code channel interference. It will help increase capacity. You can fit more APs in the same area without them interfering with each other, or put more client devices on the same AP, and you'll get a boost in performance as without smart antenna. You get a little bit better coverage. So this is just showing here, like I talked about, traditional APs have this circular umbrella shaped coverage pattern. Some directional outdoor stuff will have a very focused antenna pattern. So with smart antenna, we have the ability to go through literally hundreds of different antenna patterns for each client device that we are talking to. So with smart antenna here, not only do we look at where the client is in relation to the access point, we also are constantly monitoring where noise and interference is coming from. And we choose an antenna pattern that simultaneously maximizes the signal towards the client device, as well as sort of ignores sources of RF noise, tries to avoid listening to them. So it makes a huge difference in crowded and noisy environments. So a few years back here, the University of Brescia in Italy, their networking group got together and decided to test claims that people like us and Ruckus made as far as smart antenna benefits. The entire result of their paper that they published is right here. You can go visit it. But short version is they did their test, and in a real world scenario, smart antenna makes a huge difference as far as performance goes. So it's ideal for hotels and conference rooms and things like that. Anywhere you've got a tough RF environment you have to deal with or have a lot of devices in a small area. So in general, when talking about our access points here, hold on. So Terry sent in another question here. This was about that. How does it compare to Ubiquiti? So Ubiquiti doesn't have smart antenna. It's pretty much just us and Ruckus. So if you buy something with smart antenna, it's going to have significant performance gains over Ubiquiti. In fact, if you join our, I think it's our Wi-Fi 101 webinar, we actually do a nice test scenario where we take our wall plate AP and Ubiquiti's wall plate AP. Stats-wise, they're basically identical, with the only difference being the smart antenna. And we graph out exactly what a huge benefit it is that smart antenna gives you. So that's something, if you can join that webinar, you know, we can document that, but it makes a gigantic difference out in the real world, again, where you've got a lot of APs in an area or you've got a lot of sources of RF interference. So now we'll go back here talking about the hardware. So this is another thing which differentiates us dramatically from Ubiquiti, is the way we design our hardware. So our access points here, they're solid state hardware, right? There's no moving parts. So what causes these to fail over time? There's two main sources of failure. One of them is capacitor failure. A lot of capacitors out there are what we call electrolytic capacitors. They're filled up with basically salt water. They can dry out, they can leak, they can boil over. So we only use solid state capacitors on all of our access points, even our little cheapy ones. The other thing that causes failure is heat fatigue, heat buildup in the device itself. So if you grab one of our access points and you grab one of our competitors, you will notice our access point weighs a lot more, even if we're talking something expensive like a Meraki or Ruckus. So why is that? So one of the things you'll see in our access point here is we'll have at least one giant, basically heat shield that's behind the PCBA. Some models, we may have a second one in the front. This is designed to pull the heat off the board, to keep the components from getting too hot, to keep the solder joints from weakening, and then we vent it out through copious vent holes in the back of the access point. You know, some of our competitors don't have any, not only do they not have any sort of heat shield to pull the heat off the PCBA, they don't have any vent holes. So the heat just gets trapped in there. That's why some of the other access points fail after, 18 months, 2 years, something like that. That's why our APs have a full lifetime warranty on them. The other thing has to do with RF design. So if you open ours up and look at us and our competitors, if you've ever been to one of our trade shows, you've probably seen this. We normally have a Ruckus and a Ubiquiti opened up on our display table. We have a lot more shielding on the PCBA than you'll see on the competitors. You'll normally see 1 or 2 little shieldings on most of our competitors, where with us you'll see 4 or 5, 6, depending on the model we're looking at. So that helps us with a little EMI, and that helps us with signal to noise ratio. It's a small difference in performance, but it makes a big difference when we're talking about those edge cases, the difference between a frustrating non-working connection and a connection that's slow but reliable. The other thing you will see is we do not mount our antennas directly onto the PCBA. So if you open up our $80 NWA 1123 AC, you will see our antennas are mounted here onto a plate that's above the board. If you open up an $800 Ruckus, you will see the antennas are mounted directly onto the PCBA. So by lifting them up off the PCBA, again, we're reducing we're improving the signal to noise ratio and slightly reducing the noise that might be coming off the board. There's also some benefit here with the way that this is designed, which can reflect the signal back towards the antenna to give us a little bit of a boost. So again, it's not going to be a huge difference, and you probably won't notice any difference, in a good, clean environment. But when you start getting to those edge cases, this is what's going to make the difference. So let's talk briefly here about Wi-Fi 6. Wi-Fi 6 is making a number of huge changes to the Wi-Fi protocol itself and how it behaves. It's going to solve a lot of the issues that have plagued Wi-Fi for a long time. But we've got some challenges with it. First challenge we've got is, a lot of these new benefits, you're not going to be able to take advantage of them until most clients are Wi-Fi 6. So there's still going to be a couple years here before you really start seeing the full benefits of Wi-Fi 6 product. But it is coming, so if you're deploying something now, it's worth taking a look at Wi-Fi 6 just to help future-proof that network and get those benefits as more and more client devices move over to Wi-Fi 6. What's going on here? My preview is not working. What's my next slide? Okay, So the other thing to keep in mind also when looking at Wi-Fi 6 products is they aren't all the same. So there was a rush of products trying to market themselves as Wi-Fi 6 um, that came out last year and even the year before that, believe it or not. So those ones are using chips that don't support the full feature set of Wi-Fi 6. And for the most part, those features they don't support are some of the key features that differentiates them between 11AC and Wi-Fi 6. So that's something to keep in mind. That basically anything that launched before August of last year is probably using an older chip that doesn't support the full feature set. Our entire range of Wi-Fi 6 products supports the whole feature set. The other thing to talk about here, speaking of Ubiquiti again, is Ubiquiti's new Wi-Fi 6 APs. They only put Wi-Fi 6 on the 5 gigahertz radio. Wi-Fi 6 is the first upgrade since 11N that affects the 2.4 gigahertz radio. So you're still using Wi-Fi 4 technology on a Ubiquiti Wi-Fi 6 AP, whereas we're using Wi-Fi 6 on both the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz radio. So a lot of people didn't realize that, but with 11AC, it was only 11AC on the 5 gigahertz radio. With Wi-Fi 6, you can do Wi-Fi 6 on both radios. So going on here to switches a little bit here. We've got a lot of switches. We've got a lot of switches. So I want to talk here about how we've named our switches, because when you're looking at the price list or pulling it up at distribution, the name will help you figure out a lot about what that switch is and what its functionality is. So hold on a second. So first thing is all of our switches will start with a prefix. ES tells you that it's a 100 megabit switch. There are no gigabit ports. GS is telling you all the ports are 1 gig ports. If a switch starts with XS, it's telling you all of the ports are 10 gig ports, or at least multi-gig. XGS tells you that there are some 10 gig ports and some 1 gig ports. And then MGS is our metro switches. We don't really offer those here in North America that often. But those are switches that are designed for big telcos to act as sort of a carrier switch. And then if you look at the end of the product's name, you will see oftentimes a letter. So if it's P, it tells you it's the old 802.3 AFPoE standard. Almost everything these days is HP, which is 802.3 ATPoE standard, or 802.3.BT, the new so-called plus or PoE. And if it ends with an F, it tells you all the ports are fiber ports. So another thing you will notice on our switches is that we have what are called combo ports. So basically, you've got your standard, copper gigabit ports right here. And then over on the side, you've got these 4 ports here. These 4 ports are actually 2 ports. And then we give you the flexible option to use either copper or SFP on each port. So you've got 4 physical ports, but from a usage scenario, it's 2. It's just giving you the option to use fiber or copper for each of those ports. I'm surprised I left this in here. So SFP modules are fiber connections would go up to 1 gig. SFP plus means they can go up to 10 gig. So on some of our higher end switches here, we do have the ability to stack those switches directly using what's called a DAC cable that provides a 10 gig connection between those different switches for that. Most of our switches also though support virtual stacking where you can control ports across multiple switches at the same time, especially in Nebula. So we'll talk briefly here about PoE. We offer something here called Intelligent PoE Management. Basically, the way PoE works is devices identify themselves as fitting into 1 of 4, or I think now 5 categories. And that based on the category, it tells them how much power it needs to reserve for that device. So the problem is there's some big jumps here between the different standards. I think Cat 3 is, I believe, 15.4 watts. The next step up from that is 30 watts. So obviously that's a huge jump. You're doubling the amount of power that has to be reserved. So we've got the ability to monitor the connected PoE devices, figure out how much power they really need, and then free up that extra budget to use for other devices. You can power up more PoE devices this way. So this is just kind of showing you here. Here is class 3, 15.4 watts is what this phone identifies itself as. But actually it only uses 9 watts at peak. So with our ability to put it into consumption mode and intelligently monitor things, rather than reserving 15.4 watts for each phone that you plug in, we're only going to reserve 9 watts, freeing up an extra 6 watts in the budget so you can plug in more devices on there. Same sort of thing here on a camera. This is a class 4 device, so it's reserving 30 watts if we're following the standard. But if you put it in consumption mode, we're freeing up nearly 14 watts per camera. So you can plug in a lot more cameras. So we've talked about the prefix here. We've talked about the postfix here. The next thing is the model number of the switch itself. So you will see the model number here, such as 1005 HP, then you'll see a dash and then the number of how many ports it has. So our 1005, 1008 here, these are SOHO unmanaged switches. Going up to our 1100 series here, these are unmanaged switches that are aimed more at a mix of business scenarios. Some are rack mount, some are desktop. GS 1200 is very basic web managed switches. XGS 1010 and 1210, those are our, got 10 gig uplink ports on them. Going up to the GS 1900 series over the 1200, unlocks some more features, unlocks a lot more configurations, and most of these are rack mountable. Going up to the 1920 series, we get Nebula Flex. We also get additional features that are built in as part of the web management platform. Similar thing with the 1930s. Whoops, there we go. And then going up to the 2200 series, those are our true layer 2 switches, whether we're talking 2210 or 2220. So these will give you not only the web interface, but they also give you a dedicated command line interface. And then on the higher end of things here, 3700 series is what we call light layer 3. Some people call it layer 2 plus. Going up to the 4600 series, that's when we get the true layer 3 switches. So I know I went through that fast, but there's a lot of them there. We also have something here, which is what we marketed as a surveillance PoE switch. It doesn't have to be used for surveillance, but it was spec'd out specifically for use in IP camera deployments. It's got some cool features here. So we can drop the speed to 10 megabits per second, and it'll allow us to send Ethernet, including PoE, up to 250 meters. Traditionally, right, Ethernet with PoE is limited to 100 meters. So you more than double the range by dropping the speed down to just 10 megabits per second. So that's kind of a cool feature there for those situations where you need to run really long drops and you don't want to run fiber for whatever reason. The 1300 series are the unmanaged version of it. The 1350 series are our web managed version. These can also be managed with Nebula. Another cool feature they have here is they have the ability to do continuous PoE. So when you reboot the switch, it continues to provide PoE power to the connected device. So when you reboot the switch, you're not rebooting your cameras or your access points or whatever PoE devices you have plugged into the switch. Doesn't matter if you're just making a configuration change, if you're factory defaulting the unit, or if there's some bug that's caused it to reboot itself. We also have the ability to go into the GUI, see what devices are connected, see what their IP range is. And we have the ability also here to use either LLDP or ping to ping the connected devices. And if they stop responding, we can power cycle them to reboot the device automatically. So you can see here, there's a number of different commands here. You tell it how frequently it should pull the device, how many failures it should experience before it in a row before it reboots the device. And then once it's rebooted the device, how long it should wait before resuming. So you give it enough time for that connected device to fully reboot itself and start responding again. So that's it for today's webinar, guys. Wait a minute, there was one slide I'm missing here. I do not know why the slide didn't show up. Maybe it incorrectly got flagged here to be hidden. Let me see. My PowerPoint's acting up. I can't see the preview, so I can't see next slide. There we go. So this is what we should have seen. My menus aren't working either. It's gone blank. But so if you're looking to buy licenses, you can buy licenses through distribution. We do also have the ability to buy licenses online through the myzyxel.com. So myzyxel.com is where you go to register and set up security appliances. So it's a good idea to have one myzyxel that you as a company use. When you log into myzyxel, up at the top, there's a little thing there to reseller request. So you're going to want to request that. So you become a reseller, and then you can have your customers, as you set up their equipment, you can have them registered to you as a reseller. So you can keep an eye on all of the different licenses they have, what's set to expire, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a really good tool to have, makes it really easy to keep an eye on things and resell licenses. And once you've done that and you've requested that, email your salesperson, David or Jacob or Tri, and let them know what your account is on myzyxel. And they'll set it up with your partner discounts to make sure you're able to buy licenses with the discounts. And then what you can do is you can buy your licenses right there. You don't have to worry about keys or things like that. You can see your customer, you can see their devices, you can see which products they have, and then choose which license you want to buy for each product, and it'll automatically get applied there for you. If you didn't set up your customer yourself, or maybe you've adopted them from somewhere else, you can really easily go in there and request that you become their reseller, and then gain access to being able to see the stats on their stuff. So this is something really important for you guys to do. We're working on, I think the prices on here are still a little bit higher than if you were to buy through distribution, but you do get the benefit of it's a lot easier to do, it's automatically applied, etc. But I believe we're going to finally get them both in line here very shortly. So you can use this for security licenses. You can use this for Nebula points. There's also a link in there for buying VPN software. There is a little bit of a trick with the VPN software. It's part of a different third-party system. So your reseller discount isn't automatically applied. Your salesperson, though, can give you a coupon code, which should get you down to about the right price. Okay, and that concludes today's presentation, and I've lost all my buttons. Let's do that. So there we go. If you have questions, send them in here with the Q&A box. Alternately, you can always email me offline with questions, feedback, things like that. I know today's webinar is a little bit rougher than normal. My PowerPoint's been acting really weird. So we got a question here, do web managed switches support SNMP? Most of them do. I think everything 1900 and higher supports SNMP polling. And I think our 2200 series and higher support SNMP as far as, oh, my mind's gone blank on the term, but the ability to push out some minor configuration changes with SNMP. I believe that's available in the 2200s, but for sure everything 1900 and higher can do SNMP for monitoring. I am not seeing any more questions coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar. If you were typing something up, go ahead and highlight it. Just send it to me in an email. Again, my email is Sean R, SHAWNR @Zyxel.com. Also, be sure to join some of our other webinars. I do have my Wireless 101 webinar, I believe, coming up. I think we're doing the Wi-Fi 6 webinar again in the near future. And then I know Tri and Marcus have got a number of different security-focused and switch-focused webinars coming up. So join those if you can, and if you have suggestions for us as far as things you'd like to see us cover, things we could do better, let us know. I mean, we want these presentations to be valuable for you, and we need your feedback on the type of information you need us to provide you. So thanks, guys. Appreciate you all turning out.